Hi, it's Lau again. We're going to address the nature of what we call what's life all about. I'm going to put you on a visual journey of this for those of you who do really well by seeing and not just hearing me talk, okay? So many people have heard of a concept called yin and yang, okay? Obviously, you've all seen this symbol, yin and yang. Actually, it's called the Tai Chi symbol. Some people say yin and yang. There's no ang in Chinese language. It's yang. So if you hear me say yang, don't go, is that like yang? Yeah, it's it's yang. Okay, but it's the Tai Chi symbol. Many people make this a symbol for duality, but in fact, it is not duality because there aren't two things here. It's one thing with two aspects. Okay, so inside of us we have a yin and yang, we have a male and female, we have a light and dark, we have all of those things within us. It's still one thing, it's not two things. Okay, I'm going to use this symbol to explain something about life. Some people come to me and they say, what's the Taoist view on life? What's the Taoist view on what is it all about? And the answer is a very simple one, but I'm going to explain it to you even more simply. It's experience. Life is just about experience. You're not going to leave here with anything you gained here except for your experience. That experience gives us skill. That skill gives us what we call gong fu, or hard-earned skill. Okay? So we're going to use the Tai Chi symbol to explain something called growth. Growth is the key and cure for every problem in life. You have to grow or you will die. Simple as that. I take this symbol here. It is a circle with a dot in the middle. Astrologically, that's the symbol for the sun. Chemically, it's a symbol for gold. But for our purpose, this is the symbol for your consciousness. When you say, why is life terrible? Or why is life amazing? It is neither terrible nor amazing. Life just is. However, your ability to interpret, understand, and assimilate life, that facility itself is in fact why you consider life to be terrible or amazing. It's the information you bring in and how you weave it in a story. If this is all available information, and that little dot right there represents your understanding of the world, then you have to in fact put all of that information into this small little understanding, which means you're not going to really understand your world. You're going to mislabel, misunderstand. You're going to have an extraordinarily difficult time interfacing with your world, because when things happen, not only will you not understand the bigger context of why it must happen, but in fact, you're going to then say, it's because I'm bad, or life's not treating me well, or the universe is against me, or life is against me. I promise you, life is not against you. It in fact could completely give a damn whether you're alive or not. In a broader context, not because you're not good or you're insignificant or you're bad, but because you are life itself. You don't think about your hand in terms of you, but it is still you. Life and you are just like you and your hand. It's just an extension. It's not against anything. But you have to understand how to interact with life. The nature of what that means is this thing called growth. If you do not grow, you will die. When you go through life events, everything expands that consciousness to make it match. But what will determine whether growth is pain or Opportunity will be dependent on what you are looking for and how you interpret what you are seeing. For example, everything that happens in your life, at the moment that it's happening, you have no language or context, usually. So the first time a woman gets married and she's like, oh, I'm a wife, and maybe she's got a kid, and I'm a mom, and what do I do? What do I do? There is a particular question there because it is new, unknown behavior. Things that you know already, they won't cause you to grow. It's new events. Hurricanes like here in Houston, hurricanes like in Florida, earthquakes in Mexico, there's earthquakes in California going on, flooding in Africa and in India. These things are happening, and people say, why does this have to happen? And the answer is because we live in a dynamic world that spins, wobbles, and orbits inside of a system with much, much larger objects that spin, wobble, and orbit, surrounded by objects that spin, wobble, and orbit, surrounding a huge ball of plasma that is streaking around through our galaxy on its own orbit. And all of these dynamic forces enable this thing that we call life in our world. This is how we call life. Without these things, there's no life. When we can understand our world, we're in harmony with it. When we don't understand it, we still have to put some meaning to it, which means we're going to put it in our assumptions, put it through our logic. And even if we don't understand, cosmological events, we're just going to say, well, it's because mankind's doing bad and they're not, and we're being cursed. Cursed? How cursed? Why cursed? Humans, when they don't know something, they make what's known as an assumption. There's just no way around it. Humans must make an assumption. Humans say, well, based on this, I think it's that. They have no other way to start. This is what we do. The world and most of our processes have to be based on assumption because there's so much we as a species don't know we don't know. Remember, we haven't been keeping records for very long, and even when we have been keeping records, it's based on the assumptions of what they called science in their day. And we're going on basic assumptions of science in our day. But we don't know. And that scares most people, but it liberates other people. And why? It's based on the assumption. If we don't know, we're going to be killed. This universe in our solar system has been around for 4 billion years that we know, right? Our planet's 4 billion years. We're still fine. We're still here. And of all the things that have happened with solar radiation, solar flares, and solar storms, and all the endless impacts of comets and asteroids and everything else, guess what? We're still here. So you could make just as easy an assumption that we're doing okay. And then all these things, while we may not understand them, well, they are in fact feeding the way we look at our world. And we can assume that it's all working for us, or we can assume that we're not good and that it's happening to us. Your assumptions will then be the basis of how you look at your life. You see, we assumed 1,000 years ago that because the sun came up and went over and around, or maybe 2,000 years ago, I guess, in Rome, that there was a guy in a chariot and he went over and around, and when the sun went down, it was in the underworld. And I guess you could believe it was under the world. But that's what they believed. Why? Because they had no other way of looking at their world, and so they made an assumption. Every assumption you make will be the basis of how you interact and experience your life. For example, if I'm a 15-year-old girl and I go, why am I fat? The question, why am I fat, shows first that her assumption is that she's fat. Is she going to learn about lipid responses, inflammatory responses? Is it going to learn about glycogen and insulin process? No, she's not going to learn about that. That's not what she's asking. The assumption here and how her mind and how her emotions will respond to this assumption is fat equals I can't be loved, I'm ugly, I'm unlovable. Because that's the basis of her assumption. When you look in your life, you will notice that life is constantly changing and we're constantly growing. But in that growth, there will be pain. Why pain? Because if you're comfortable, you won't grow. Why would you grow if you're comfortable? But you have to look at that and go, is it pain or am I just uncomfortable? If you cannot be uncomfortable, life is going to be very difficult for you, because life is not going to give you a customer service satisfaction survey wondering, was that okay? How did you feel about that? Was it the right temperature? What could we do to make, it's never going to get that. Life is going to be what it is and you'll have to meet it because that's the way it is. There'll be earthquakes and there'll be hurricanes because this is the world we live in. And we can make peace with that, or we can resist that saying, I can't accept that. And if you can't, now you understand pain. But if you can see that and say, well, based on this dynamic, what can I do with that? How can I make that something that I can use to make my life, the people around me's life, a better thing? And that will bring you opportunity. But your assumptions themselves will be the basis for your questions. And if you have painful assumptions, then life is going to be painful. If you tell me life is painful and you can't tell me, and I know, the answer is, I can't argue with you. I can't argue with somebody who knows they're right. My master once told me this, it's a Buddhist proverb, it's nothing new, you must have heard of it. My master told it to me, which was, never argue with a fool, you only prove that there are two. I won't argue with you. If you're convinced life is pain, yep, you're right. I'm wrong. I have no problem being wrong. But if you're willing to be a little brave for a moment and say, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about my basic assumptions in life? I'm not asking you to put on rose-colored glasses and sing Hakuna Matata, but what I'm asking you to do is to look at your basic assumptions and say, what if this isn't happening to me? What if this is just happening? What if this isn't the end of the world? Because everything you worried about has never been the end of the world, or well, how are you listening to me now? What if everything you assume about life is wrong? What if the things that you're going through are not happening to you, they're happening for you? And they're going to give you the ability, the skills, the growth to be able to adapt, conform, and find harmony with your world. Because this world will brook no argument or dissension from fools or children. Life is love, but it's not the Hallmark kind of love where you get roses and candies. It's the type of love that says, to be compassionate, you must do what's necessary in this moment. And that doesn't look very nice sometimes. If you find a dog and it's been hit by a car and it's in a lot of pain, you may have to put it down. It's not a pretty thing. Nobody's asking anybody to like that. But sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes, if you have the skill, you can do something more. But if you can't, sometimes love requires us to look and see the opportunities that are available to us, and we have to meet where it is. And every opportunity you take opens more doors. The difference between a successful person and a not successful person is simply the amount of options that they have open to them. When you create more opportunities from yourself by growing and matching your life and understanding what your life is asking of you, then you'll feel more successful. And growth will not have a painful or scary thing, but will in fact have exponential potential. Okay? I'm going to stop this here. I'll continue on in different ways, but I hope this helped you to understand a little more. If you have any questions, you can obviously leave a comment or private message me at lau@fourdragonschool.com, or you can just hit like and share if you want to have a conversation about this. All right? Until next time, I'll see you then.